Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Can I Be Mean for a Sec? I'm your host, Maggie. I'm here with my other host, my best friend, Ella.
Hi.
And today we are talking about books, which anybody who knows me knows that I can and do frequently and everywhere. I love them. I have 100 of them. I have lots of opinions on them. Mine are right, yours are wrong. I don't know what to tell you. I love them. I always have. I always will. It's a problem. I have an actual problem. The amount of money that I have spent in my lifetime on books is actually obscene. Like, if I think about that for more than, 3 minutes, and those are just the ones I own. Those aren't even all the books I've read.
So, as much as we would love to deep dive into a book club on our favorite stories, our favorite books, that's not necessarily our topic today. We are talking about how to upkeep your books, physical versus e-readers, tracking your books. Do you have categories? Do you have your own personal library? Things of that nature. We would love to have a book club episode in the future, but that's just not today. So
Lots of people have opinions on these things, and most of those people are wrong.
I don't think a lot of people are wrong, but it is just a common courtesy of your books versus others. But
Oh, yeah, 100%. But first of all, your library is your best friend. Even if your local library doesn't necessarily have a large selection, whether digitally or physically, by the way, your library has digital and physical books. Figure it out, friends. So even if your library doesn't have a great selection, your library is your best friend. For starters, they're going to have a lot of books you're not going to find at Barnes & Noble, because Barnes & Noble is going to be specifically stocking the newest releases, New York Times bestsellers. They're not necessarily going to be stocking that weird thing over here that your friend read 10 years ago that they thought was really cool. Libraries, they've got everything. They've got a weird selection of books. I've read some really weird things in my day because I just saw it at the library and I thought it was interesting. You should go there. That being said, your friends sometimes also have very extensive libraries. Maybe that's not super common, but for all of my friends, that is the truth. And they have weird books you've never heard of before, and they also have new books that you've heard of before. And sometimes they have duplicates because people have gifted them books that they either already have, or two people just gifted them the same book and they didn't even know until they moved halfway across the country and took all their books out of their boxes. I know that's a weirdly specific example, but just it sometimes happens.
it sometimes happens. And being the friend of, having the friend with the extensive library and all of the books, I do appreciate coming to Maggie and talking about, okay, well, what stories are you reading? What's the topic of this week? Or a quick little side story for our listeners. Maggie came to visit me for, I think it was a long weekend in between a work site for her. I can't remember if it was right before or after Onyx Storm came out, the third book of the Fourth Wing series. It was right after. And I had been trying to convince Maggie to read this series for 2 years. I love dragons. I love those kinds of stories. I've been such a fan my entire life of fantasy, of more so just dragons specifically, but the Fourth Wing series for me is just such a fun read. I know that there's a lot of discourse around the actual quality of the writing and the universe, but I just think it's just such a fun read. And it took me forever to get Maggie to read it. She finally read it. She read the first 2 books in the 3 days that she stayed at my house.
Yeah. And then I read the third one right after. I read the whole thing in 4 or 5 days.
I had to make sure that Alex picked her up from the airport with said book so that she could finish it when she got home.
And then he didn't. We went to the bookstore later and got it, but he did not. He had flowers though, so that was good. It was Valentine's Day for context. That leads into another one of my strong opinions. We know too much and we care too much about what is going on with authors and what people are saying about books, because that's not the only Rebecca Yarros book I've ever read. I didn't know it, but it's not, and they're not something that stands out as oh my god, this is the best writing I've ever read, but they're fine books. They're entertaining books. I have no problem with them. There's nothing particularly wrong with them. They're not on my extra selective, these are my favorite bookshelves, but they're good. I wouldn't not recommend them to somebody. I don't know that there are books out there that I wouldn't recommend. If somebody was talking to me about books and they mentioned something that they liked and I had read something similar, even if I didn't like it, even if I didn't think it was very good, I would probably still recommend it to them because they would like it. I think there's too much, oh, well, I have to qualify that, like, I like these books with, like, I know there's this whatever. Like, okay, you can like Harry Potter and you can just say you like Harry Potter and it doesn't matter. Like, it's a separate story. Now, being all into, like, going and buying Harry Potter stuff, that's a whole different part of discourse about social stuff, and we're not talking about that. I don't care to talk about that. But being a Harry Potter fan, rereading the books, rewatching the movies, there is nothing wrong with that. And you shouldn't have to qualify, oh, I don't like her, but I do like these books. Just like, I know Fourth Wing's not the greatest, but I like it. You don't have to do that. I know people do, but it bothers me that we're doing that. It bothers me a lot.
So what do you consider to be a bad book? You don't have to name titles, but like what are the qualifications of being a bad book that you just wouldn't finish it?
I don't like it. That's really it. Like, I've read some truly trashy, I have read some very poorly written books. There was one specific trilogy that I read freshman year of high school because my English teacher had it in her classroom, and I had her for, like, reading for pleasure. It was an actual class we had, and I took that class, and I read these books in there. And I own 2 of them now. I'm hoping I can find the third at the book crawl this month, which, if anybody doesn't know, in Charlotte, every year in the month of April, some number of local bookstores, this year it's 25, they all team up, and you basically get a piece of paper and you go to all of them and you get stamps at each one, and then you collect prizes after having been to however many. And I love it and I'm obsessed with it, and I've been planning about it all year and I'm doing it. Anyways, so I hope to find the third one this month. I found the first 2 last year, and I own them now. In case anybody in my life ever wants to read them, in case I ever want to read them again. I would not consider them good books. I somewhat enjoyed them. I really, really enjoyed what it was supposed to be. It did not do that. And, like, it didn't deliver in, like, a super, what I would consider a successful way. But, like, they're good. And I own them now. I did not own them when I read them. And I have, like, gone out of my way and purchased them when I encountered them in a bookstore, right? So, for me, if I'm not going to finish a book, it's literally just because I don't like it. Like, something in it just doesn't work for me. And I'm usually not a giver-upper on a series, especially with, like, TV and stuff. But there is at least one very, very popular book series that I read the first 2 books, and I could not get past some of the writing style choices. It made my brain itch, and I was like, we're not going to do that. And so I stopped reading them. And all of my friends don't get it. But that's okay. You know what it is.
It happens to be one of my favorites here.
I know. And that's okay. Like, I don't think it's particularly well written, and it doesn't do it for me, but it does it for you, and that's fine. Like, that's my thing. Like, I tease my brother-in-law because he on his Christmas list last year, he had some books on there, and I had him for Secret Santa, so I was gonna go try to get some of those for him. And I tease him. I'm like, dude, you read boy books. Like what even is this that I'm looking for at the bookstore, right? Why did I almost say grocery store? What is this that I'm looking for at the bookstore, right? Like, you read boy books, store. But, like, there's nothing wrong with that. They're not actually they're just books. I just call them boy books because they have a boy vibe to me.
What are boy books? So, what are examples of boy books? Because the only boy books I can think of are just historical nonfiction, something that would be classified as classic literature, or something that's, like, required reading for a high school English class is what I think of as boy books.
That's what you think of as boy books? That's insane. First of all, anything that friend Ben reads is a boy book. That's not true. That's kind of true. He reads a lot of boy books. No, I think... So these were kind of, like, classics adjacent, like, kind of the great American novel kind of style of books. And, like, a little bit of, like, horror kind of thrown in there. Really, boy books are basically just anything that is not my vibe, which is not actually true, because I've read boy books. Also, like, as a kid, boy books are like those little kid sports books. Like, I would say Winger is probably a boy book. Swindled is definitely a boy book. It's not bad, but it's a boy book. I read it. And I read the other books around it, but that's a boy book. So sports books are also boy books. And that's not to say girls don't do sports, because we're both girls who do sports. But specifically, like, sports books, especially because a lot of sports books are about boys, those are boy books. I totally make the rules, and I read boy books sometimes.
So
I
would you consider like a male-centered universe being just a boy book, or
No, because Percy Jackson is not a boy book.
fair? Percy Jackson is not a boy, but that's also that's not necessarily like a male-centered universe.
Okay, Magnus Chase isn't a boy. I mean, yeah, that's the thing. It's not a male-centered universe, but like the main character's a dude. Same with Magnus Chase. Same with, well, I guess the Kane Chronicles has too. It tends to be, I think, like, it's kind of the whole vibe, because every time I look at a Brandon Sanderson cover, anytime I see someone like post it on Goodreads or whatever, that's a boy book. I don't know any boys who are reading it. Everybody I know who's reading them are girls, but that's a boy book. And there's something wrong. Again, there's nothing wrong with boy books, and boy books are not just for boys.
They're just
boy books.
it's just the vibe. It's just the vibe.
It's just a category.
Barnes and Noble now needs to add boy books as a genre.
Yeah. A lot of sci-fi I would consider boy books too. Don't ask me why. I do not know. I wouldn't consider most classics boy books. Like, I haven't read Lord of the Flies, but I don't think of Lord of the Flies as a boy book.
Oh.
A picture of Dorian Gray is also not a boy book, even though it's exclusively about boys. Boys. Good book, by the way. I wrote my senior paper on that in high school. I started to read a book. It's another fairly popular book, very popular author. I wasn't really getting into it, but I was like, it's got to pick up at some point, right? And then the main character, who was like 17, got her period for the first time and like was not aware of what it was. And something about that just like completely shut my brain down. Like, I'm never reading that book. I don't know why. I think it's because it didn't make sense and seemed like a kind of unnecessary plot point for like everything that the book was supposed to be. I don't know. But that was like a hard no for me. So sometimes it's just something weird like that. And I wouldn't call it a bad book. And if somebody told me they read it and they liked it, or like they wanted to read it or whatever, like 100%. I probably wouldn't recommend it to anyone because I didn't finish it, so I don't know what it was about.
A friend of ours, she constantly recommends me books. And again, I cannot read at the same pace that the two of you read, and it frustrates me immensely. But
if this is the friend I'm thinking of, I think she also mostly listens to books at 2 times speed, which we'll get into that because I have thoughts on that too. But finish your story first.
But even when she's like reading physical media, she reads it so quickly. My brain cannot compute as fast as y'all's do, and it's really frustrating. But she recommended me 3 series, and the first 2 I was just in love with. I am obsessed with them. I'm rereading them. They are my favorite books probably to this day. But then the third one she recommends me, and she's like, there's 11 books in the series. The 12th one's going to come out in a couple of years. You're just going to love it. It's the same. I got to chapter 4 of the first book, and that is the first time I ever said, I'm so sorry, but you're just wrong. I cannot read these anymore. That's the first time I've ever returned a book from my e-library because it was within the 7-day return window. The phrase that got me was, of course I can, I'm a Gemini. And I said, I'm done.
Yeah, I made it through the synopsis for those books, and I said, oh, this is not for me.
So Maggie and I went through recently her personal library. She showed me all of her new books that she's gotten through the book crawl, all the ones that she got last year, and all of the room that she has for more. What was your total number of books again?
Oh, I'm definitely over 400 at this point.
Like physically
Probably
in your house?
Close to 500. Yeah.
Yeah, so Maggie's
Yeah, those are just like the reading books. I have like some children's books, I have like dictionaries, and I have like coffee table books and stuff. And then, so with those, I'm probably close to 500.
Gotcha. So physical versus e-reader. Obviously, you love a physical copy. You've invested so much in your e-reader too. How, like, do you keep your books as trophies? Do you walk through the process between having reading your physical book versus your e-reader? Mostly because almost exclusively read on my Kindle because I just don't have space for physical books besides the few I have behind me. Again, I talked about this in a previous episode. These are all of the physical books that I own currently. I have a few in storage, but I don't have an extensive library, but I do have an extensive e-reader library. And I prefer just having the e-reader so that I'm not damaging my books. They're not sitting collecting dust if I'm only reading them one time. My e-reader is just easy to carry around. If I'm traveling, it's simple to put into my bag. But that's just for me and my preference. But Maggie's got both sets. So walk me through. What's a book that you're going to physically read versus e-read?
Wherever I am when I'm reading it is the biggest determining factor. So I have some digital books that I own. I was a very early adopter of an e-reader. I saved up my money for like a year and bought the original modeled Nook when I was in high school, the one that had like the little scroll screen at the bottom so you could go between things, and it had the buttons on the sides, and the rest of it was just like a screen. And so like when I had that, again, early e-reader days, I bought some books digitally. Cool. I kind of fell off the e-reader wagon for a very long time. Mostly because I just wasn't reading that much. I was in high school. I was like super busy, so I was not reading at the same volume that I was. And then I was in college. And then when I graduated, I had all of my books. And I just I didn't have like a need to get them digitally. At this point, like Kindle had really taken over the market. I've never been a big Amazon girly, so I didn't really care to do it. Also, like I was fresh out of college, I wasn't really spending a lot of money on books. And then when I did, it was either, oh, this new book came out, I'm gonna just go buy it down the street, because I like to know that like I've bought my book and I have my book. And I also, if I physically own it, I can lend it out to my friends and family. So when my niece and nephew are old enough to read, I already have books that I'm like, okay, I'm going to give them this, and I'm going to get these, and I'm going to lend, like, I'm thinking this through. I'm not keeping this a secret from my brother or my sister-in-law either. And so, like, I really like the idea that people can share my books, and so I like to have them in a format that's shareable. But also, I really like to know I've spent money on this. I own it. It's mine. And also, like, my book is never going to die on me. That being said, I have recently acquired a new e-reader, and it connects directly to Libby. If I am traveling, I'm using that. I will check out a book from the library that I already own to read it on that while I am traveling, so that I don't have to bring multiple books with me, because I don't know how fast I'm going to read while I'm gone. Sometimes it's a lot, sometimes it's a little. There is a way to move my Nook books onto there. I just have to figure out how to do that. But I try not to spend money on digital books. I tend to do all of those in library format, but whether or not I'm doing it physically or digitally just depends on if I am at home or traveling, if I already own it, or if I'm borrowing it from the library, because it's also, I can sit in my bed at 3:00 in the morning and go, oh no, I need a new book. I'm out of books. This has not happened yet. I have almost 200 that I have not read. And go online and look through the digital library catalog and check that out right then and there and start reading my book immediately without having to wait and go during library hours. I also only owned one audiobook.
Oof, I own quite a few.
I owned one, and I only own it because it is my favorite book of all time. I listen to it probably at least once a year. I listen or read it at least once a year. And one time I tried to check it out from the library and somebody else had it, and I was like, oh, this will not do. And so I purchased it. And I own it on Apple Books, and it is on my phone, and I listened to it like a month ago. And that is the only audiobook that I own. Every other audiobook I will borrow from the library. That, I don't know why, but for me, owning audiobooks seems ridiculous. Again, aside from like the one, I can just get them from the library for free. And then when I'm done with it, it goes back to the library. And I have read it. And then if I want to own the book, I'll go buy the book. So I'll also check out audiobooks of books that I own if I'm like out and about or traveling, or like if I need an audiobook to listen to, if I'm having like an audiobook week as opposed to a podcast week or music week, I will check out an audiobook of a book that I own because I'm trying to work through what I have that I haven't read, and I will check that out, listen to it, and then I have the book. It's been read. It's good to go. That's my very long-winded story on all of that.
I love audiobooks. I share an audiobook account with my mom. And so she gets like the X amount of credits per month. And so I've just racked up those credits on anything that she doesn't automatically buy. But I'm a big fan of audiobooks. And for anybody that says audiobook does not count as reading, yes, it does. People live busy lives. Pe- People live busy lives. People have jobs. People have things that they're doing, and they're still enjoying a book through an audiobook. And it's still a form of reading. It's still a form of consumption. It's still a form of entertainment. They just may not have the seconds to look at a screen or look at a book when they're filling their time with something else. They're still enjoying a form of entertainment and media.
I'm sure for some people it's not the same because not everybody's brain works the same. I recently learned that a very popular author I've read most of their books does not think in like images. And I'm like, how do you write books with descriptions if you don't think in images, right? So like everybody's brains work differently. And it probably uses different parts of your brain. Like the visual language processing part of your brain is going to be strengthened with reading. That's just how it works. Again, I'm not like a neurologist by any means. I don't know how the brain works, but I just assume like there's different parts of your brains that do different things. But when I personally finish an audiobook, give it a week, I'm not going to be able to remember if I read that book or listened to that book. Like when I recall the story, when I'm listening to the story, my brain is processing it and behaving in the same way that it would if I'm reading that story. I have the little movie running in the background that I'm kind of like watching while I'm listening or while I'm reading, and it processes the same. But I think there's a couple reasons why my brain does that.
Yeah, no, my brain, I don't think in images and pictures, and that's why I do prefer having an audiobook. Or I recently learned that people started calling it immersive reading, where they're listening to the audiobook and reading along. I've done that before of just I need to like remember what's going on in the story, and I've just done it just to drown out the noise around me. But someone started to call it immersive reading, and I don't think that that's the point. I mean, sure, it does help like keep your focus. It does help you keep on track, and it does help retention of the book. But is it really just called immersive reading? There's nothing immersive about this experience.
I mean, I guess it makes sense. Like you're hearing it, but I don't know.
But yeah, when people talk about, oh, books are a movie in your head, I've never just like played a movie in my head about the book. I have to like actively think of where they are, what they're doing. I can't imagine they're in a I can't play that there's a forest and it's foggy and it's midnight in my head. There's a campfire. I can't do that. It's just, okay, they're in a forest. It's foggy. There's a campfire. And that's how my brain works.
Right now, I can see it. Like when I think thoughts about like I'm gonna like say something or whatever, like I think in words, but then when I'm reading a book it shows up like a movie.
I wish that that's the way my brain worked.
And it's not like it like super clearly shows up like I'm like watching a movie on TV, but it's like I don't know, it's kind of like in the back half of like it's like in this part of my head I can see it, and so I like see like everything that's going on, but I also see this kind of like vague like ghosty movie of what's happening. And it's just like that's what's going on, but I'm also like obviously very visually aware of like the book that I'm reading and stuff. I think I have some thoughts on audiobooks. For starters, I hate like I've never even tried, like I'm not even willing to try listening to the book and reading the book at the same time because these do not move these move so much faster than the person who's talking yapping in my ears, right? And like my brain voice for it and your book voice for it are not going to be the same. Now, my favorite book that I have listened to easily upwards of 10 times. I can hear the entire thing. If I like start thinking about it, I can like hear chunks of the book in my head right now in the narrator's voice. When I read it, I hear it in the audiobook narrator's voice because I listened to it first. And I listened to it multiple times before I read it. So that's just how that goes. But they're not going as fast as I'm going. I almost exclusively don't believe in listening to audiobooks faster, which is insane being me.
I do, but my audiobook speed is 1.3 something. Just a little bit quicker because it gets rid of the the narrator's need to enunciate how I am right now on this podcast. Right? I'm trying to enunciate all of my words so that it's very clear for our listeners that may not be watching my lips move and be matching what I say to the way I look. So I do listen to audiobooks at 1.3 something. So it's just enough just to get rid of that extra enunciation, but that's as fast as I go. Our friend, on the other hand,
I know she listens at like 2.5 speed, and I'm like, girly pop, you have got to like I don't think that's good for your brain, right? The only times in my life, so well, I have a couple things. First, I did listen to the Chronicles of Narnia on like 1.5 speed because that was a particularly slow narration, and also I do not like those books, but I had never read them all the way through, and I needed to do that once in my life, and that was something I did at the beginning of the year last year, and now I never have to do that again. There's only one good one. I'll say that with my whole chest. I don't care. Anyways, other than that, the only other times that I felt the need to listen to stuff higher speed was like right before I had an absolute breakdown. So one time when we were living together at Boyd House, sometime, I think spring semester, I'd gone to class and I was coming back. And then I had another class. And I was sitting in my first class. And about 10 minutes till the end of class, I just start like freaking out. My brain is going too fast for how slow the professor is talking. I've taken like 4 different classes with this specific professor. Like the way she talks is not a problem. Something's going on. I'm literally almost in tears. I'm trying not to like cry in class. My whole body is hot. It's not going well. So I'm riding my bike back home and I'm like, okay, I'm going to just like listen to my podcast or music or something, and just like it did not clear out. I cranked that podcast all the way up. I think like 2 times was like the fastest it would go. I like cranked it and it's still feeling like it's going slow, right? I'm like I am like perfectly tracking it, and I'm like, this is weird. This is probably not good. Then I got home and I was trying to get something out of the fridge, and one of our other roommates was there. I don't remember which one it was. I think it was one of the upstairs roommates, but I'm not certain. But one of the roommates was there, and I kind of snapped at her, and I felt bad about it, but like, no. And then I went out on the porch, and then I tried to call Alex to talk to him about it, but he was at work. I thought he was on his lunch break, but then he was like going to lunch with friends. So I'm like having this like and then I just like completely break down. But I only have like 15 minutes that I can completely break down, because then I have another class after that. But it's a Zoom class, so like I don't have to go anywhere. But I'm just like, and then I'm in this class, and I literally, this was a hard enough class on a good day because I didn't have any context for anything that we were talking about. Like there was this like expected level of knowledge about the topic before you entered the class that I did not have. So I was just like completely lost all of the time anyways. And then add this breakdown on top of that. Was not a good day for me. I am not gonna lie. I've had a few other instances where I've been doing something and I'm like, oh, this is too slow. And I'm like, oh, that's not good. And I've been able to kind of fend it off a little bit. But yeah, so I personally don't believe in listening to audiobooks too fast. It's not that I don't think that you can like follow them or understand them or like experience the story, right? The whole reason I have an audiobook is because I don't have the time and the energy and the effort to like sit down and like spend my time reading, like full focusing on the book. And so if I'm listening to it on 2 times speed, I have to be like actively paying attention. If I'm listening to it at regular speed, I can like split my attention between listening to that book and doing a puzzle, or listening to that book and like doing the dishes. Not that I do the dishes, but what have you. Like that's what they're there for, because I still want the story to like process through. I want to get all the details. And while I'm reading it faster than I'm hearing it, if I'm hearing it only, then I can like hear, and it like makes the pacing for like the people sound more normal, and like the characters are conversing. Whereas, like, if you're listening to it on 2 times speed, like, nobody talks that fast. So then the dialogue kind of sounds like this and doesn't really track, and that's not how people talk. I mean, that's sometimes how I talk, but that's not how people talk.
I do wish that when editing these episodes that I can put us in 2 times speed, because we've already had this conversation. I know what's happening next, but I just want to make sure that it all sounds right. So I do wish that I could edit this in 2 times speed and then bring it back to normal, but that's not going to work out. So anyways, we had a little bit of a discourse before this episode started where how do we keep our books? How do we maintain them, bookmarks, so on and so forth? I know that quite a lot of people out there, and I know a few of my friends in particular, will throw hands if they ever witness me crack a spine on a paperback book.
I'll throw hands right back at them.
I am here to say, if it's my book, don't come for me. For paperback books, if I'm going to read them, granted, again, mostly read on e-readers, but I do have a few paperbacks. The spine's gonna crack, the spine's gonna wear. I'm going to read my book. I'm not gonna fold it all the way back behind on itself like a crazy person, but the spine's gonna wear, the spine's gonna tear. I'm gonna treat my book with enough respect that I'm not gonna harm the glue, I'm not gonna harm the binding. But I see so many people like stress out their books before they even read them. I've seen videos as extensive as they set their book like spine and pages up, and then one by one just peel the pages down so that it opens up evenly, so that it doesn't crease in the spine.
People are crazy.
It's I don't get it. I don't get it. If you want the aesthetics in your library, okay, fine. You have the aesthetics in your library, but isn't it just more fun? Like, anytime I see a book that's been well loved and well read, especially in a library, you know it's a good book because people read it. You know, it's been used, it's been broken.
I have multiple paperback books that have duct tape spines because I've read that book so many times. The spine, like the paper fell off, and so I went through and I took care of it. Like I very intentionally like did it like a specific way, and so I like put it on so like it fits snugly, and I like wrote the title, and then I covered it with like clear packing tape so that it doesn't rub off. Like I fixed my books, but it's just not professional in the slightest, but I fixed it. Your books can look however you want them to look. Your house, your books, your whatever. I don't love the idea that books have to look perfect to be pretty and decorative, because I'm going to have books everywhere forever, and they're going to look good because they're my books and I know them and I've read them. And it's so much better to walk into someone's house and be able to talk to them about their books and talk about books they've read and compare, oh, like you like this, I didn't really like that, but I thought it was really similar to this, because that's what I do. When like somebody comes to me and they're like talking to me about a book and they tell me about a book that they really like, at this point, I have read a not insignificant number of books, right? Compared to most of the people that I'm talking to, and especially. And so, like, someone will tell me about a book, and I'm like, oh, I haven't read that. I might have heard about it, and here's this other book that I've heard that's really similar. Or, like, recently I read a book, and it wasn't my favorite. The story took some weird turns. The pieces kind of fit together kind of funky. But I really liked the style that it was written with. And it reminded me of another book that I had read that was... It's on my all-time faves list that I really, really, really liked it. And so, like, I was telling someone about it, and they told me that they liked the one book, and I was like, oh, then you might like this one that I just read. It's a similar writing style. It's not as good of a story, but it's a similar writing style. And then the same author from... I'll, like, cross-reference out the wazoo telling people about books, but also, like, have you ever been to a library? Like no kidding, like, real library. Not like, oh, somebody's house, but, like, a real library. The books don't match. The books don't all look pretty. They're not all hardbacks. They're not all paperbacks. They all have like protective coating on them for the most part to keep them from getting too banged up on the outside. But like the pages are worn and folded, and they're books, and you can tell that people have read them and that they like them and that they've been there and that it's like a story worth reading. And again, if you want your book to be pretty and pristine, that's fine. I don't like intentionally come out here and like snap my book in half or whatever, because also sometimes when you do that, especially on paperbacks, if you snap them too hard, like pages will fall out. I have a book that I'm fairly certain is missing like 4 or 5 pages at the end because they fell out when I was a kid. I didn't even like snap the spine; they just like fell out. But I'm not 100% certain, so I'm pretty sure I still have the book. Unclear. There's nothing wrong. Like my books are usually gonna get a crease in the spine because I'm like holding a book open, and like I need to be able to read the words inside, and depending on how thick it is versus like if it's a paperback. Now hardbacks are different. The physical outside spine isn't gonna break on those in the same way because it's attached from the page connections. And like those page connections are gonna bend, crackle, and pop just like a regular paperback book. They just have the big fancy cardboard thing on the front. Anyways.
So with my small library stacked on my dresser, at the bottom here is the Crescent City trilogy from Sarah J. Maas. Crescent City is my favorite Sarah J. Maas series, even though there's only 3 books so far. There should be a few more books coming out in the future, but they are in a box set right now, and I bought them on sale because the box for it was torn on the opposite side, and I didn't care about that. I just wanted the books because I love these 3 books, and I'm so excited for more. But the problem is with them being in a box set is that as soon as I start to reread them in the physical form, they're no longer going to fit in that box set anymore. They're going to expand, they're going to stretch, and then they won't fit so neatly in that box anymore. So I mistakenly took off the plastic, opened up one of them, and said, oh, wait, they're not going to fit if I read them physically. So I'm waiting for the next one to come out before I officially like take them out of the box, but they are out of the plastic. I mean, that's the only time that I'm like, oh yeah, you don't need to like damage them at any point if it's a box set. I understand buying a box set for the aesthetics, but that's basically it.
I got a leather-bound box set of The Lord of the Rings for Christmas. And when I get around to reading those, I'm going to take whatever book and take it with me, and it'll go in my bag or my backpack or my wherever it goes when I take it out, and I'll have it in the car, and I'll read it in bed, and I'll read it at the table, and if it gets dents and dings or whatever, like that's gonna be what it's gonna be. Like it's a nice box set, and like I want to keep it looking nice. I'm gonna put it like the way that they fit. They're not like they'll fit back in the box just fine. It's a leather bound box set, and I'm gonna read them, and they're gonna live in the box, and it's gonna be cool. And like when I do finally get my bookshelves built and put my books up on shelves in my house, I'm probably going to have a few that like I lay on their side, like a series on like its side and like stand it up or whatever. Give it a little bit of like a design element. But I've never really been one for like book themed merch or like caring about my books. And so I'll have one in paperback, and I'll have one in hardback, and then I'll have one in like the new cover style, and then I'll have one in like the old cover style. And like I have a lot of like mix match. And so if I have series that match, those will be the ones that I can like feature all pretty like or whatever. And then if they don't match, they just go on the shelf, because at the end of the day, I have the book because I want to read the book. And that was the format of the book that I could acquire, so that's the one I have. Or I have it because I want to lend it out to people, and so that's the one that I have. I try to not care about them all matching. I do get really annoyed. I have one book series. I think it's a trilogy. I got the first book when it came out because I had like heard about it. I was like, oh, this is interesting. It was still in hardback when I went and got it. And so I got it. And then between the first book and the second book, they changed the cover style. But they also changed the size of the book.
Oh.
So like the first one is taller than the second one. And then the third, it's 4 books. And the third and fourth one are the same size and cover style as the second and third one. And I think it was not necessarily originally intended to be a series, because it's from one of those like really popular kind of like mainstream, like has like 87 million books kind of authors. It's very bizarre. And like I still have that, and that's still going to go on my shelf, and like it's still going to be fine. And if someone wants to read it, like by all means go ahead. Here, you can borrow it. Like I don't care, because if I go to the library, I don't care if I'm reading all of my books in like the same style. I don't care if they all look the same. Like I want my library to be like a library. Like I'd rather have the book than have the right version of the book.
Yeah. The only reason I have a second copy of the first Fourth Wing in paperback is because that one had 2 bonus chapters in it. That is the only reason I have 2 copies of Fourth Wing. So I love rereading now a series that I loved growing up, because those series that I had growing up, Percy Jackson is probably my favorite series of all time. It always will be. It always has a special place in my heart. And I was so excited when they announced the Disney Plus show, and I thought that the casting was great. I think the acting's great. I'm excited to keep watching it. But before the first season came out, I went and reread the original series, and I just was taken back to being 11 years old and just loving that part of life, learning about this fantasy world that was just so unique and so fun to be a part of, wanting to put myself into the main character's shoes. And I was one of those kids that wanted the Camp Half-Blood t-shirts, and I wanted to be from Camp Athena or Camp Artemis, one of the two. This was something that I just threw myself into, and I loved rereading it recently as an adult and just appreciating the love I had for it as a kid. Like, it's just such a fun time, and it really takes you back.
Yeah, once I get through what I have, one of my things that I've thought about doing, hopefully next year, probably longer, is so I have a running list in Goodreads of my like favorite books of all time. I think we're up to like, and that's because if it's like a series, I will include all of the series on that list, even if like it's not my favorite book of the series, like the whole series, like that's the whole point, right? Going back and rereading them and seeing if they stand up, because some of them I have read multiple times and some of them I have not. But also, like, I don't want to ruin it for myself if like I don't like it anymore. But that's probably not gonna happen. I'm pretty solid in that, because I remember, because like to get on that list, I have to like it has to be something that lingers with me after I finish reading. Like I read it and then like I'm still thinking about it a few days later. And like every book on that list, or almost every book on that list, I can still tell you like the main points, the things that stood out to me, the things that made it like notable, and like the things that I still think about from it regularly. And some of them are like nonfiction books, and they're things that like I still think about. Oh, like this thing about this place, and then I like put it in modern context, and it's kind of like a reference point that I'm constantly coming back to. And some of them are just like nonfiction books they're fictional books that I'm like I kind of habitually like think about the story, or I think about the way that it was written, or I think about like what's going on and what it means, or I think, oh, I really want to reread that, or sometimes I have reread it a lot. I also really want to read the Animorph series now. That's my other, if we're talking about harkening back to childhood, that's my other, and it's a whole separate
One
story.
of these days, listeners, I might just convince Maggie to read the Warrior Cats books.
I don't like them. I read the first like 2 or 3.
I think,
and
there's hundreds.
They just were not for me. I know. I think I did the first 2 or 3, and I think that's when I had to tap out. Speaking of hundreds of books, lots of series, another thing, I was thinking about this yesterday on the book crawl, because I go to all these bookstores, so they have all of these books. And at all of the bookstores that have all of the books, they have lots of books that are like popular, or that people like, or that are like really mainstream right now. Something that I hate, and like I own quite a few books that fall in this category, so I sometimes fall in the trap, but I usually don't. And it's kind of a commentary on like current media in general. Everything is just the same thing now. And what I mean by that, like when I was like a kid, I'm convinced this is a recession indicator. I have no idea, because I remember when I was a kid. No, listen, I'm not crazy. So when I was a kid, I remember everybody complaining that everything's a sequel now. You know, now we're making like the 4th Transformers, and why are there 87 freaking
Fast and Furious movies?
Fast and Furious movies. Yeah, why are there 78 Mission Impossibles, right? Like why is this? And then we had like some pretty unique media for a while, and now every TV show is an adaptation of a book. Or it's an adaptation of a TV show that's the same TV show but like in another country, and now we're making like an American version of it. Or every movie it's a sequel, or it's a spin-off, or it's a something, like everything's a spin-off. But books, oh my God. Politely, let sleeping dogs lie. This horse is beat. We don't need it. Why are there new Hunger Games books coming out in the year of our Lord 2025? Like,
Okay,
why is that what's happening?
Hold on. No.
No.
We needed Haymitch's story. We needed Haymitch's
No, we
story.
didn't.
Yes, we did.
No, we didn't.
Yes, we did.
No, we didn't. No, we didn't. I haven't
Yes,
even
we
read
did.
it. I know we didn't. The Hunger Games was so good as what it was. Like, so years ago, there was this book. I don't know if you probably didn't read it. They turned it into a movie. This was back in the Hunger Games craze because Sam Claflin was in it. Me Before You.
Oh,
And I read it. I thought I was going to cry. Did not cry. But I read it recently. And I found out that it's a trilogy. So I read all three of them. When I found out it was a trilogy, the last book I want to say was written in maybe 2016. Probably before that. I think the first one came out in like 2011. In 2020, the author wrote like a spin-off, like one-off book basically about her in quarantine. The Princess Diaries has like 12 books. I, again, also thought it was an only book. There's like 12 of them. And then, years later, Princess in Quarantine. Why? We don't need it. Why is it all of a sudden, like I read the Mother-Daughter Book Club. Mother-Daughter Book Club, primo children's literature. Have reread as an adult. Reread, I want to say last year or the year before. Like top tier. Will be reading with my children. Will probably read again by myself. Quality books. Like 7 years after they published the last one, which wrapped things up nicely. She publishes like one more, and it's just not as good. The cover, while somewhat thematically in theme with the rest of them, not at all accurate. The storyline doesn't really fit. It's not. Why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? I don't need new Hunger Games books. And if there are going to be new Hunger Games books, make it like a separate trilogy. Make it like a separate thing. Why are they showing up in box sets with the Hunger Games? Like, this is not the Hunger Games. This is something different. This is in the same universe, but it's different. Why are we doing this? I don't like it. I also don't believe in a novella, but that's an entirely different conversation. Why are we doing this? It's not necessary. Make a new story. Take that idea and adapt it to be different. Take that idea and just make it a separate thing in the same, like story universe. But don't just come back years later and try to do this, because also it's just so clearly, oh, this worked the first time, so we're going to make it work again.
Maggie's right. I'm wrong. Same as always. We get it.
Everybody's allowed to disagree with everybody. I just... And who knows? Again, didn't read the Hunger Games books because I feel no desire to read them, right? Like, I feel no need.
You've never read them?
No. I've read the Hunger Games. I haven't read the new ones.
Okay. I was about to say.
I've read the Hunger Games.
Okay.
Oh, I was a
Great
Hunger
trilogy.
Games girly. The first movie came out on my birthday. Anyways.
Oh my gosh.
Love. Yeah. I made my whole family go with me. Anyways. No, I like the Hunger Games, and that's my point. Like, I liked the Hunger Games. It was good. It was a good story. It was a good story. It was very impactful on literature and like how books are written and what like modern writing and books and stories entail, especially for a young adult audience or a teenage audience or a whatever audience it wants to be for audience. Like, it kicked off the whole dystopia craze of the 2010s, and so many of the other ones were really, really bad. And that's not to say it was like the first dystopia book, but it like kicked off the craze of the 2010s in a way that a lot of other previous books hadn't. But then now we're coming back over a decade later. How are these supposed to fit in? Why are these supposed to be the same? Don't make it a prequel. Don't make it a part of the series. Make it its own standalone thing. Be like, for example, in part, I am a little bit biased because I have read all of these and I love them, but the Mortal Instruments, like, they're all distinct, separate series, and they're all distinct, fleshed out stories. And yes, there are connecting themes. For example, if the Hunger Games book is about Haymitch is obviously in the main Hunger Games trilogy. So, like, write his story, write his separate thing. But also, the Hunger Games wasn't about the games. It wasn't about the winning. It wasn't about them going and fighting in the arena and what's going to happen and who's going to win. The Hunger Games was about the rebellion and the revolution and the end of that system. And that did not happen when Haymitch won. Haymitch just won. So, but by all means, if that's what you want to write it. But write it and commit to the bit and like acknowledge that like this is something that's fully separate, but it's something that I want to write and it's something that I want to be out there. Don't group it in. Don't put it in a box set of the Hunger Games. Like, it's not a book in the Hunger Games series. It's not a prequel to the Hunger Games. It's just a separate book set in the same universe. That's what's done well with the Mortal Instruments. You have the Mortal Instruments. You also have the Infernal Devices. You also have the Dark Artifices. They're all separate stories. Some of them have overlapping characters. Some of them have, like, connecting pieces. Some of them it's helpful to know this thing from this other one. But they're distinct, separate groupings and stories. That's what we should do. If we are going to keep bringing stuff back, we need to do it like that. You can't just decide that this story is suddenly unfinished and you have to reopen it and write this book that's not... Because also, like, you see it in, like I watched a TV show that's based off a book series, and they made, like, 4 seasons of the show. And then... like 2 years later, after they finished the show and it was reasonably wrapped up, because you don't always have to end when someone dies. You can just end, like, the story is over at this point. And then the person just lives the rest of their life. You don't have to have all of it. But so the story ends, it's well wrapped up, it makes sense. And then they created a movie. And the movie was not as good. The pacing on the movie was weird. They could have made a separate season that had better pacing, better dialogue. The dialogue was terrible. Better dialogue. The plot was muddy. It didn't really make sense. It didn't progress smoothly. They could have just made another season of the television show and paced it well. Or they could have just let sleeping dogs lie. But they didn't.
Well, I think that
on that.
I think we've got quite a bit of our book talk out of the way, but I think we'll definitely have to have a second episode on just our favorite stories and why, and trying to give like a good no spoilers review of our favorite stories, and we can go from there. So for our listeners out there, please leave a comment on what are some of your favorite series. How do you keep your books? How do you read your stories? Are you strictly an audiobook listener, or are you a new immersive reader according to TikTok? So,
if you do that, I have questions.
I do have questions.
I have questions and also concerns.
But thank you guys so much for listening to us this week, and we will see you next time.
Bye!